This is the most disgusting story of the elite class, most gruesome survival event, and above all, the most horrifying psychology of humans in life and death situations.
On July 2nd, 1816, a state-of-the-art French frigate ran aground. Of the 150 souls cast adrift on a makeshift raft, only 15 would be found alive 13 days later. What happened in those 13 days is one of history's most gruesome tales of survival, and what they were forced to do to each other is unimaginable.
This is the story of the Raft of the Medusa. Our tragedy begins not with a storm, but with politics. After Napoleon's defeat, France's new king, Louis XVIII, needed to reward his loyal supporters. He appointed Hugues de Roy de Chamaresse, an aristocrat who hadn't sailed in 20 years, to captain the frigate Méduse.
His mission? Lead a convoy to Senegal. His qualifications? Virtually non-existent. Ignoring experienced officers and sailing far ahead of the convoy, Chamaresse steered the Medusa directly onto a sandbank, 100 miles off course. The ship was hopelessly stuck. Panic set in. The ship carried 400 people, but its 6 lifeboats could only hold 250. Who would be left behind? The captain, his senior officers, and the wealthy passengers claimed the lifeboats for themselves. For the remaining 150, a grim alternative was devised. They would build a raft, a crude 65-foot platform of spare masts and planks, barely seaworthy. The plan was simple. The lifeboats would tow the raft and its human cargo the 30 miles to shore. It was a desperate solution, but it offered a sliver of hope. But that hope would be short-lived. As soon as the raft was in the water, chaos erupted. The tow lines strained, slowing the lifeboats. The cries of the men on the raft grew louder. Then, a single, selfish decision sealed their fate. The tow rope was cut.
The lifeboats rowed away, leaving 150 people abandoned in the middle of the ocean. They had only a few bags of soaked biscuits and several casks of wine. No water, no way to navigate, no escape. The first night was a preview of the hell to come. 20 men were lost overnight, either swept away by the waves or crushed in the desperate struggle for a space in the raft's more stable center. As the sun rose on day 2, the survivors realized their horrifying predicament. Thirst became a torment. The salt water burned their skin and the scorching sun beat down relentlessly. Some, maddened by dehydration, drank seawater, hastening their own deaths through delirium and convulsions. Hope began to dissolve. By night 2, the social order had completely collapsed. Fueled by wine and despair, a mutiny broke out. Soldiers and sailors, convinced their officers were hoarding supplies, attacked. The fighting was brutal, a chaotic mess of swords and knives in the dark. The officers and their allies fought back. By morning, the raft was littered with bodies. More than 60 men had been killed in the fighting or had taken their own lives in despair. The survivors were now fewer than 70, and the worst was yet to come. Day 3. The remaining survivors stared at the bodies of their former comrades. The soaked biscuits were gone. Their thirst was agonizing. It was then that the ultimate taboo was broken. To survive, they began to cut flesh from the corpses, drying it in the sun. This was the moment humanity was left behind. Could anyone blame them? Or is some line never meant to be crossed, even in the face of certain death? The following days blurred into a monotonous cycle of death and grim survival. The weakest were thrown overboard to conserve the dwindling supply of wine. The one woman on the raft and her husband were among those sacrificed. On the 7th day, the officers held a grim meeting. They concluded that only 15 of the remaining 27 men were strong enough to have any chance of survival. What did they do with the other 12? In a final, chilling act of self-preservation, they threw the 12 weakest men, the sick and the wounded, into the sea. This was no longer survival of the fittest, it was an execution. For another 6 agonizing days, the final 15 survivors drifted, delirious, emaciated, clinging to life by a thread. They were ghosts on a floating graveyard, surrounded by the haunting memory of their actions. And then, on the 13th day, a speck on the horizon. A ship. It was the Argus, another vessel from their original fleet that had turned back to search. Was it real or just another hallucination? They frantically waved a makeshift flag. The ship seemed to pass them by and their hope turned to ultimate despair. But then it turned back. They had been seen. Rescue was at hand. The story could have ended there, but the scandal was just beginning. When the survivors' account was published, it rocked France. The incompetence, the cowardice of the elite, the abandonment. It was a damning indictment of the restored monarchy. Captain Chaumareix was court-martialed, but thanks to his aristocratic connections, he received a mere 3 years in prison. The public was outraged. The story became a symbol of political corruption and the callous disregard for the common man.
It was this outrage that inspired a young painter, Théodore Géricault. He became obsessed, interviewing survivors, studying corpses at the morgue, and even building a replica of the raft in his studio to capture every horrifying detail. His final masterpiece, The Raft of the Medusa, is not just a painting, it's a historical document, a raw, unflinching look at human desperation, a political protest, and a timeless question. When stripped of everything, what are we truly capable of? What would you have done?
And that's all from our history today. If you liked the video, please follow, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. See you in the next video. Bye!